Hey, 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 it is your favorite Black millennial therapist, and welcome to Let's Put It on the Table, where I'll put it on the table, which is the way I bring my Black girl experience, emotions, and faith to topics faced in life. Here, we are getting down to the nitty gritty, validating emotions, debunking narratives, and looking at our inner selves while learning to walk in our purposes and enter into a new layer of healing. As a person who values transparency but knows how hard it is, let me build you up as I get real. So come on, get comfy, and let's put it on the table. Disclaimer: this is meant for entertainment, thought provoking, and educational purposes. This is not to replace that of professional services and does not discourage you from getting them. Everything that I say is my own opinion, my own thoughts. Thank you, and let's get into it. Hey y'all, how y'all doing? All right, we are back. Episode 4 of Let's Put It on the Table. How are y'all feeling? I feel pretty good. I'm in a good space. I have a clear mind. I am pushing and working to not worry about what is going to come the next day. And that is fine because, in the words of Auntie Tab, that's my business. But I hope that y'all have been enjoying the conversation so far. And I hope that even if not having more of a debunking section with anybody else, that you are really having this internal conversation, because my ultimate goal is just for everybody to just be on this trajectory of healing and be okay with their emotions. And as I was talking about, just the cultural conversation and the cultural influence and shaping that happens with us and our emotions, I think it's really good to just give these babies some play, okay? Talk about these kids, because what you will find is that a lot of the times we are dealing with our own inner kid that is unhealed. Table is shook. I don't know why y'all expect it to happen any later in the session. Like, y'all know I'm coming to shake tables. Respectfully, though. But we really need to talk about these kids. And when I'm saying kids, you may have kids, you may be an auntie, uncle, you may be a teacher, you may interact with kids, but there's this kid in you that is probably so drawn to this conversation because on your inside, your little kid is like, mm-hmm. And so we're going to speak to that, right? It's amazing how when we see children, we don't really understand that we are talking to little adults. The difference between kids and adults is an age. But we often don't really think and consider the fact that children experience the same things we do. They just don't have the language for it. I'm going to say it again. Children experience the very same things that we do. They just don't have the language for it. And so if you find yourself frustrated with your baby today, if you are upset, if there's a part of you that just is like, oh my God, why are you still dealing with this? Remember, you just a little baby human. We look at their size and we look at their appearance and their chronological age, and how ironic is it that it makes us feel like they don't experience what we do. They do. They are kids from the moment they come out the womb. They are hungry. They are tired. They have to use the bathroom. They want to be entertained. They have thoughts that go through their head. And also they have emotions. And too often, they're not allowed to express their emotions. And I know I was very candid, as I will often be, about the fact that I parent my child very differently than my mother parented me in a lot differently than a lot of what I have seen through a Black cultural lens. And I'm not saying my parenting is any better for anybody who's like, oh my God, no, this is just my choice because I'm choosing to do something different, something that goes against the grain, something that I did not see, and something that some days has me just looking and being like, you couldn't have been my mother's child. And that's okay because she was made for me. Um, but our babies have emotions and too often these emotions are diminished because we look at someone who is smaller than us and we're probably reminded of us who could not have these feelings. See, so many parents want to be down. My mother swore to God, oh yeah, like I'm the cool parent girl. And every parent feels like the cool parent. And I love my mama, okay? You can't talk about her. Um, but we forget this part of us that had emotions and probably all too often heard statements that invalidated these emotions. I think one example in the media that we often see is like love. Oh, that ain't real love. That's puppy love. And I was in puppy love, and you don't know nothing about love at 16 and 17. You do, because you remember your first heartbreak. You remember the first person that made your heart flutter, and maybe it's not the same feeling of love that you have now, but it was still your version of love. And that was still your emotion. And then we wonder why we have a bunch of adults who are in such toxic, unlovable relationships who are not able to express what healthy love is. But we tell them every time they feel love, they can't feel love because somehow an age means that you can't feel certain emotions. And I just want to give a news flash. Your age does not determine your capacity to feel. It doesn't. Your age and your environment and your culture may allow you to have more words and more of a perception of what you actually are feeling, right? But please let it just be known to the masses that your age does not affect your capacity to feel. And we miss the mark when we do it. We miss the mark when we invalidate these children who have feelings. You don't suddenly get to 28 and it's like, oh yeah, you can feel this now, you can feel that. No, we're born with it. As we see, we're born with a category of knowing feelings that are pleasant and feelings that are unpleasant, and it is shaped by our culture. The end. And so it brings me to a reading that I was doing, and it's called How to Teach Kids About Emotions in Psychology Today. And the title itself stuck out to me. It's by Abigail Gertwitz, Dr. Abigail Gertwitz. And it said, empowering kids to develop effective responses to their own and others' feelings. And I was just like, yes, girl, when I saw the word empowering, because too often the narrative has been invalidating. Or even on the other hand, pacifying. But it's not enough empowering these days. And so knowing just how much culture shapes our perception of emotions and how to express those emotions, I love the idea of empowering. You know, we either have the parents who are like, oh, that's just how they feel, and they set no limits, and we have a child who can't hear no and doesn't know how to, have their feelings because of the first sign of a tantrum or dealing with any inappropriate behavioral expression to an emotion, they were pacified. Give them what they want. It's okay. They're fine. They're a princess. Or we have the other hand where we invalidate. So telling a child statements like, it's not that serious. You'll get over it. You won't remember them 5 years from now, or even the infamous man when I was your age, dot, 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 insert long story is invalidating. Be mad, be upset, be uncomfortable at that. It's invalidating. It doesn't empower the child. It creates the narrative that this emotion is not safe to speak to so and so about. And so they avoid you. And I really think that this area where we get into teenagers and hormones and yeah, there's some developmental stuff. They do feel invincible. They do feel like they can do whatever they want and they know more than you because there's this struggle between independence and being an adult and also still being dependent and they haven't learned a healthy interdependency. There is still we have created the blockage between us and our children. And I don't just mean as like a parent. It could be a caregiver, it could be grandparents. It can, even though I think grandparents parent much differently. Grandparents grandparent much differently than they parent, okay? Because both my grandmas were my best friends. I don't care what no one says. And I know they weren't like that to their children. I know it, actually know it. But I think about us as high school teachers or anything like that. And too often we're so upset that these kids won't come and speak to us and I just can't reach so and so and I can't do this with so and so. And even though my role as a therapist, a lot of the times I'm speaking about, well, when so and so came to you with this situation and said they felt like this, you kind of shut it down. And so we literally have kids telling you, I don't know how I feel because they don't know how they feel. Because you have invalidated their feelings and they don't want to speak to you. They can't and they won't. You, as an adult in their life, has not created that space for them to emote. And I don't blame you because 9 times out of the 10, you were their age and you had an adult who invalidated how they felt. And the generational trauma goes back. But we get mad at these blockages that we create and then we don't understand why our children can't speak. They just always say they don't know how they feel. Have you considered that maybe they don't? They said I wouldn't understand. Have you considered that maybe you don't? And maybe you won't. Because your culture has told you that as a parent, you should feel like you have the, entitlement to say that they don't know how they feel and blah, blah. And so you're regurgitating what you know. Or on the other hand, you're pacifying them. So it's like, I don't care how I feel. I'm just trying to get what I feel to get what I want. And I don't know how to handle this. And so we get to this idea of emotional socialization. And that is a fancy 2-word term that really just talks about how children learn about their feelings. And if you have been with me, we know that children learn about how they feel by the culture that they are in. But Dr. Nancy Eisenberg speaks about 3 crucial factors that influence this. Firstly, how children deal with their emotions, how we as parents react to emotions and outbursts of our children, and through conversation. And so let's take this down because again, it goes back to culture. But let's break it down. How parents deal with their emotions. Remember, I need everybody to get this fallacy out of their head. Do as I say and not as I do. That's the dumbest thing that we can tell a child. Children are sponges. They observe. They're going to do what you do. Which is why a lot of times we see our kids in maybe an abusive relationship. They're like, why would you do that? They saw you do it. Or they go touch something, or they mimic a dance move that you did, or mimic a word that you say. They're doing as you do. I'm sorry. Do as I do and not do as I say and not as I do. It's not practical. It happens sometimes, but the majority of the time, a child is going to do as they see you do. The end. And so how are you dealing with your emotions? And it's never too late to change it. I'm very open with my conversations about with my daughter. Hey, you know what? Mommy got really frustrated that she couldn't find this item and I started to feel like a failure. And you know what? I growled and I was really upset and I'm sorry. I shouldn't have handled it like that way. I was frustrated, But I need to learn how to just maybe ask for more help, take a chance to pray. I have these conversations because, again, my child is seeing what I do. And so, how I handle my emotions is going to be a big thing. She sees me, when I'm happy, be like, oh, this is great. She watches me say, you know what? I'm really proud of you. That is great. Sometimes I'll even say it to myself just so she speaks that into herself. I'm like, you know what, Kyra? You did that. I'm proud of you. And I'll hear her say that to herself. Or if I'm upset, I will narrate how I'm feeling. You know what? I'm upset. My hands are shaking. I'm feeling really hot on the inside. I'm going to go take a moment because I'm not feeling okay. And I don't get it perfect every time. Please believe me. Because there's too many times I have to come back and apologize for it. But she sees it, and so she can do it. How we as parents react to their emotions and their outbursts. You have to remember, your kids are always looking for approval. They want to know that they're accepted. They want to know that they can have this moment and see how you feel. And if you're like, cut that out. I don't know what you're doing that for. It's not even that serious. You just stunted a learning moment. And don't worry, if you did, there's still chances. Even in that grown age, relax. Okay? Because I hear some of y'all be like, oh my God, it's all right. Relax, okay? That's why we having this conversation. But when they're not met with approval, they will shape themselves to please or appease us. And so sometimes you hear parents say, "Oh God, they act just like me. I can't deal with it." If you can't deal with it, they obviously couldn't deal with it either. And if you can't deal with it, why can't you? What's going on? Inspect that. Be able to say, "Hey, you know what? I understand you're angry, but you kicking that toy is unacceptable." You can feel angry, you can feel upset, but what you cannot do is kick something. Let's talk about it. Speak to it in a calm manner. If a child is yelling, you yelling back at them, guess what it's going to equal? More yelling and a headache. Been there, done it. So we have to be mindful of how we react to their emotions and their outbursts. Remember, they are little bodies with big feelings. Why? Because if you go back to the first 2 minutes of me beginning, children experience what we do. They just don't have the language for it. The end. I could mic drop it right here, and I'm not because I want to talk. And then thirdly, through conversation. And you have to realize it's not just how we speak to them about their emotions, but it's how we speak to others about theirs. How, sometimes you see that kid having an outburst. I wish the heck they would. Ain't no reason to be feeling like that, blah, blah. Remember, if your child's around, they might be taking it in. You're going through a hard day. I said to you all that I narrate sometimes how I feel. I say that intentionally to help my child in having a conversation with themselves to say, okay, anger is not bad. I just have to do this, or I have to take a moment. And sometimes she'll come to me like, hey, mommy, I know you're frustrated. Why don't you go pray really quick? Or, I'm frustrated. Can I have a minute? So we have to really consider that while they do what we do, they also do hear what we say. We have to be cognizant of what we're doing because we're trying to help them learn about their feelings. And remember, their feelings are going to be influenced by the culture that they're in. And then John Gottman coined the term emotion coaching for parents. And he says the 5 most effective steps to help us help our children includes learning to effectively regulate our own emotions. And I know for some of you, you're like, how do I do that? Just start. Find something better. We can't always be yelling when we're upset. We have to find better ways. Go pray. Go take a walk. Ask for a minute. Put some headphones in and play your favorite song. Do a silly dance. Watch a TikTok that's always going to make you laugh. Color. Crochet. Take a mental break. Take a shower. Find something. Because the more that you can learn to do it, you'll watch everybody else fall in line to do the same thing. And maybe you don't know where to start. the best thing to do is to try, because the worst thing that you can do is find out what you tried doesn't work. The end. And also remember there's levels to this, okay? A common thing that we use in the world of therapy is a emotion thermometer, right? And I love doing anger thermometer, especially with boys, because it's like, all right, I'm angry. And when I'm angry, I always do X, Y, and Z. Do you always? But the cool thing about the anger thermometer is you can break it up, right? And so I usually like to break it up in tens. And I'll make 10 different notches with zero being, the little base at the bottom, 10 being the top, and being that explosive measure, and five being right in the middle. And having people to really break down what they're feeling, because you can't regulate what you don't understand. And so this is causing you to make some like intentional internal conversations. Maybe calling somebody and being like, yo, this might be a hard conversation for me, but how do I act when I'm like really at a 10? I know I go from 0 to 100, but what really is a 100? Okay, what's a 90? Okay, what's a 80? And learning what helps you regulate at those different stages, because the same thing that's going to help you regulate from a 50 down to a 40 or a 30 or a 20 is not the same thing you're going to use at 100. If I'm moderately mad, I can go take a little walk, blow it off, and I'm fine. If I'm super, super upset, I need to cry. I need to pray. And taking a walk when I'm at a 100 is just not going to cut it. My mind is still racing. And so this requires some intentionality. Helping children identify and label their emotions. Again, this is going to come with some intentional ability for you to be able to identify and label your emotions. And as we go further, we'll talk about getting past the secondary emotions and really chiseling away at these primary emotions. What is at the core of what you're feeling? But the great thing is that you have the ability to shape and help your children identify, even if you're not at that stage. Just your inquisitiveness and your ability to be like, what's really going on? Okay, where does that come from? Well, I'm I'm angry, and then hearing what happened, what made that child angry, and really being able to say, hey, maybe you're disappointed. Are you feeling some type of way that X, Y, and Z didn't happen? And so maybe you can't do it for yourself, but you can help them. And in turn, it'll help you. Listen and validate our children. I can't say that enough. We invalidate, we pacify, and neither of these two extremes are helpful. They create children who don't know how to effectively emotionally express themselves. And so when we can say, you know what, maybe I don't understand that, but I can understand how that was hard for you. Or hey, you know what? I don't know exactly what you're feeling, but let's talk about it a little bit. What do you think will make you feel better? Could you use a hug? These things help our children to feel safe. So when you do have that 13 and 14 and 15-year-old, you don't feel like you lost them. You don't feel like they're so far gone and don't know how to express themselves. And you ask them how they feel. And maybe you don't like the way they're feeling because maybe it has something to do with what you're doing. But to realize it's not disrespectful. I have raised a child who can express themselves, especially if they do it in a respectful manner. I raised them to do that. Brava. Assist children to solve their emotional challenges. That is so crucial. We have to have these conversations. We have to allow them to solve it. We can't scoop in every time. Somebody's not going to scoop in every time you're disappointed or every time you're sad. Sometimes you have to feel it and you have to learn, okay, I'm feeling this way. And it doesn't mean it gives me permission to go do blah, 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 but I'm okay. And we can help our children do the same thing and set limits if needed. Again, little Johnny, it's okay to be angry. It's not okay to kick that car. Hey, it's okay to be sad. It's not okay to go and make someone else feel down. And sometimes it means setting limits on ourselves as well. You can't get upset and run to Twitter and make a subliminal post and then be upset. Say if the shoe fits. And so a lot of these same things that we have to do with our children is the same thing that we have to do with our inner children. And that's okay, because that's what I'm here for. I'll talk about mine openly and you do yours personally. How does that feel? Should feel a little bit safer, right? And I just want you to know that none of this conversation comes with judgment. It comes with an air of complete understanding because, hey, I've been there. I've done that. I'm still here and I'm still working, and it's okay because the same children that we're working to help are the same children inside of us who needed that help. And it's okay to say, I didn't get it. And also, what can we do? So be okay with having this conversation and being open about your own challenges. This is the place for you to reflect, debunk, and to heal. You know, like we forget that we diminish inadvertently how children feel, although they do feel, and arguably, probably at a greater level than we do. Because they're innocent and they have the ability to be open and to talk about these things. Yet we feel like they can't. But perhaps because when we ask them and they can't go over what's going on, maybe we can realize that neither can we. And this creates a conversation where reach one, teach one. And we're sitting here and we're healing our inner child while saving the children that we interact with. And because children are so vocal, it can create some cognitive dissonance, especially because we weren't allowed to have these spaces. But, we have to work through these feelings of unresolved trauma and learn to be uncomfortable with how our children's vocalness may make us feel, but also still work to empower them and not invalidate or pacify. And the great thing is that it's never too late to start, right? And so as I'm talking about it, I realize that some of this can feel really heavy. It can feel like, oh my God, like what is, girl? But I hope it also feels like, you know what? And I got this, and I can do it. Because emotional socialization doesn't just stop at the child. I would argue it starts with us. You can't learn about what you don't know, but you can create a space of openness to learn about it. But as always, I'm sending you light and I'm sending you love, and I can't wait to come back and talk to y'all again. Be well.